Hi, and welcome back to the Blue Screen Brothers. We started a discussion around managed service identities last time, Marius.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. And I think you promised us to go deeper into some more exciting ways of using it.
Yeah, so one of the limitations that we ended up having the last time was that accessing resources in another tenant is difficult. So managed service identities cannot be used cross-tenant. Or can they?
Or can they? Yeah.
That's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, cool.
So what we're going to refer to is a blog post that I made a few days ago, where I detail how to do this. But let me just use this drawing as sort of a helper. So the way we need to do this in order to work cross-tenants is that our user assigned identity can be used by any number of resources in Azure, right? So we could have 1 or 10 automation accounts all using the same user assigned identity, or logic apps or whatever, doesn't matter. But again, these user assigned identities cannot be used cross-tenant. They belong in your own tenant. However, we have app registrations in Azure. They can be multi-tenanted. So that means that if I have an app registration, I say that this is multi-tenanted and it's consented into another tenant. So that means that I can say my app registration wants to have user read all, and then it's consented into what I on the drawing here has named tenant B. Then that app will have access to read users from tenant B, even though my app registration is in tenant A. This has been around for ages. But what has not been around for ages is federated credentials, that where you can use you can federate credentials from the app registration to a user assigned identity. And what's the point? Well, the point is that then you can actually work with resources in other tenants and involve 0 secrets or certificates or any kind of credentials that you need to roll over at any point in time.
Everything is managed by Microsoft instead. So it's automatic.
Yes, that is correct. So let's see, where should we start? Well, we can start on the app registration side. So because that is what we will need to do here. We will need to create an app registration, but we do not need a service principal. And there's actually no way of doing that in the user interface in the Azure portal. So I will do it anyway. I will create it here. We will get a service principal or an enterprise app in our tenant A, as we call it. However, it's not used for anything.
Yeah, so we can delete it if we want.
Yes. But we can also create the app registration with like new MG application. So the graph PowerShell instead.
That would be the best way. Or if you do it graphical, remember to delete the enterprise app because you don't want annoying apps laying around that are not being used. That looks like they are being used, because that's the most annoying part here. It will be so connected that you think it's part of the same solution.
Exactly. So let's create an application. We name it user reader app or something. Doesn't matter what it's called. So let's name it that. And let's use this multi-tenant. So this is the only thing that we need to make it possible to use it multi-tenanted. And then register. So, and that's everything that we need essentially from the app registration side. The only thing missing, at least for now, is that the API permission, we will add this Microsoft Graph permission, user read all. Okay? But I will not consent. So now I'm in this tenant named FortyTwo Labs. Okay. So that means that there will be a enterprise app in this tenant because I created it through the UI, but it's not used.
Yeah, so we could just
the important
delete
part,
or
yeah, I could do that. But the important part is that we have on API permissions added user read all, and what this actually does is just to tell the app that this is what you want to request, essentially. So what I can do now, if I copy the client ID of this app registration and go to another tenant like this, and then go to this URL. It's just the admin consent where you provide a client ID and hit enter and sign in. So now this will request the permissions that we asked it to request, essentially. Meaning you can sign in and read user profile, and that is if we go back to our app registration, that is this one, as you can see the same text as here, and read all users' full profiles, which is this one.
Oh.
So this is correct, and we click accept, and we get an expected error message. This is fine. It's not to worry about. This is just that we haven't configured any reply address at all because we're not using it as a web portal. So if I now were to go inside this this good workaround dev tenant, so this is sort of tenant B, and then I search for, what did I call it? User reader app or something?
Yep.
Yeah. So here you can see that I have this user reader app. But if I go to app registrations, it's not here because it isn't here. So referring back to this this drawing, you can see that now we created this app registration and we created this enterprise app in the other tenant. But we can also see that if we go to the enterprise app in that tenant B or good workaround dev, then under permissions, we will find the same permissions that has been consented. Here I can even revoke them if I want to. But user read all is what we have granted it. So far, so good. And this has been around for ages. And if we were now to add a client secret to this app, we could sign into, even though the client secret is added in tenant A, we can sign into tenant B with it because of this multi-tenant functionality. Cool. Good step one. So let's continue to the Azure resources that wants to use this functionality here. So the first thing that we will need is a user assigned identity. You can also use a system assigned one, but let's use a user assigned one because I like them. So let us do a user assigned managed identity, create a new one. Let's name it. It doesn't really matter. See, does not really matter. And creates like this. So now we have this this identity, and if you want to sort of have the explanation behind everything that has to do with what a managed identity is and everything, we have separate episodes for that. Yeah. So this app now, and again referring to this picture here, will be used as a federated credential to authenticate into the app registration. So that's what we're going to enable now. So how do we do that? Well, we first need to go to our user reader app. But instead of client secret or certificates, we will add a federated credential. So let's add a credential. We will choose other issuer. And this is where we need some information from our environment. So first of all, the issuer is the following, but we need to replace the tenant ID with our with the tenant ID that we have the user identity in, essentially. That's not listed on this managed identity at all. So you need to either know it, or you can go to enter ID and find it here. So this is the tenant that will issue this federated credential. And then from the on the value here, this is where we will look in the subject field, and we will need the object ID of the user assigned identity. So that means that we must go and find our does not really matter, copy the object ID, and paste it here. And we can name it whatever. And you will see that the audience is interesting. You have this strange value here. You can actually change it if you want, but this is something that is built in and just finished for you. And this is a way where this is the resource that we will authenticate to first. So this will be a two-step process, and we'll get into that. So now we have a federated credential, and I can even click on it, and I should be seeing that this has now actually changed somewhat to customer managed keys, and you can see that it actually points to this does not really matter identity. Cool. So that was our first step or third step, something step. That was this part here, federated credential. So now we're just missing this last part here, the automation account and assigning the identity, but then also, of course, actually using the identity. So let's go to our automation account and go to identity. And you can use, or you can do this from any kind of service that has support for user-assigned identities. But let's say you want to use some kind of storage account or something, and then they don't really have support for this federated credential method yet, or might not never get it. So you'll understand why very soon when we sort of show what we will, or how we will actually use it. So now we have this identity associated to our automation account. So you can see here under associated resources. What we need to do now is a bit tricky, or might be a bit difficult to sort of understand. So this user-assigned identity is not used to actually access anything. It is only used to prove that we have a credential for our app registration. So let's go to our automation account. So the first step that we will now need to do, let's go to create a runbook. Let's name it test PowerShell 7.2 and create. Like this. So I have some code pre-made. It's the same code from our previous video. I just replaced this one. So this is what you would normally do in a user-assigned identity world, where the resource that you're actually trying to get is this graph.microsoft.com resource or some other resource. But this means that in this situation, we would use this identity to get token for this resource. But that's not what we will do. So instead, what we actually need to do here now is that we need to get a token for this resource. Recognize it?
Yeah.
Yes. You saw it on the federated credential. So what this actually will do now is that this access token that we will get using our user-assigned identity will actually be for this resource here. So let's just save and run to see what comes out from our system here. So that will be our first step. So we will ask for an access token for this TokenExchange resource, and then we will use that token in the next step. This will take a little while to start, but we're almost finished actually. So what we will see hopefully now is some output, and we will have a look at that output to see what it looks like. So this is where we could either just talk rubbish, or we can have someone. There we go. Yeah. That was just perfect timing.
Yeah, that was nice timing.
So let's have a look at this one. Paste it on jwt.ms. So here is the token that we now got. So we can actually see that this audience is here, this FB something. If we were to Google that, we will see, this is always fun. I have to find my own blog first. But you will see there's other people that has used this GUID, which means it's a known GUID of some sort. This is how I I just Google the GUID. If there's plenty of results, it's something that is just a known resource. But this is the resource for the TokenExchange. But that's not something we need to worry about. This is just another representation of this this app essentially.
Yeah.
But we will also see that the issuer here, this is the same issuer that we have on our federated credential. Same value. If we look at the subject, 8E0 something, this should now hopefully be the same value that we have here, 8E0 something. As you can see, these two, so now we're on the federated credential, these two tie together with the access token that we just got.
Yeah.
So now we can actually use this token to get a token for the app registration. But not only that, we can actually use the token to get an access token for another tenant. So even though we are running in this FortyTwo Labs tenant, we will be getting access to another tenant essentially. So let's have a look at, I'm going to copy my code from my blog post. So what we need to do now is the following. As you can see, access token for tenant B. So we actually need to start working with this token endpoint in Azure. So we will need the target tenant ID. So that means that we will go into, and this is public information, so there's no like secret stuff. So we will find this good workaround dev, the other tenant B, and copy the tenant ID from that one. And I will just paste it here for now, like this. You should of course use variables and stuff instead. And then you can see that it's the token endpoint that we're talking to, and there's a few different things we need to provide to that. The first thing is this access token. As you can see, we provide it as a client assertion. So there are client credentials involved, but this is how you provide a federated credential instead. There's no secret or anything involved here. And it's this app registration client ID. So that means that we need now to say that we will use this access token that we got for this TokenExchange to authenticate as this user reader app. Let's copy the client ID of that one. That belongs here. So what we're actually telling the automation account now is to get an access token, use the access token in the next step to get another access token. So we can actually do something like this, write output step 1, and then we can do so like this, write output step 2, and this will be there. And we can even use this access token for something. So let's say we do something like this. Let's just remove that one. And as you can see here, we're accessing this access token for tenant B. We're trying to get users from the tenant, counting them and outputting some stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see if it works on the first try. Might be that I have something failing here, but we will see. What we hopefully will see now is that we will see step 1. We will get a similar access token that we got initially. We will then see it using this access token towards the app, getting another access token. So after step 2, we will have a look at that access token as well. But I expect it to be this audience, but the issuer should be our tenant B, the good workaround dev tenant. So that should be this 2370. So that is what we hopefully will be seeing in step 2, the step 2 access token. So let's now see what it end up having as a result here. And this is also where we can try to time this output
perfectly. Yeah.
So everything is working. As you can see, it did find 32 users in tenant B.
Yeah.
If we now look at this step 2 access token, like this, you can see that the issuer is actually this 2370. So the tenant B tenant, it has the user read all. And we can also see that it's the user reader app that has actually signed in. And if we have a look at the client ID here, or DE and so on, this should be here in app ID. And I believe that the subject is probably the same thing as the OID. So this ID here, this is actually only in tenant B. Which value do you think this subject here is?
It's the app in service in tenant B.
Yes, it's the it should be the object ID of the enterprise app, user reader app.
Yeah, B8.
As you can see, object ID in our tenant B. So this will actually be an ID that only exists in tenant B.
Yeah.
If I were to consent to the same app in another tenant, it would get another object ID.
Yeah. Cool.
And if we now were to grant access to, right now we had access to user read all for the Microsoft Graph, works fine. But we can also add access to key vaults or other Azure resources or anything integrated with Entra. If you build a custom API that you want to access, this is how to do it.
Yeah, perfect. So we could have now, when we talked about key vault, we could, for instance, get a secret from a key vault in tenant A in a good and safe way into tenant B and use it there.
Yes. Or you can say that we publish our some kind of secret in one tenant. We want to access it from a logic app in another tenant. Then this is something you can use to retrieve that information, and you will be handling no secrets at all, except for the secrets that you get from the key vault, of course.
Yeah, of course. But that's making it much more secure than exchanging secrets or stuff like that. So
exactly. So and there's nothing that you need to worry about expiring, because on the federated credential on the user reader app, this doesn't expire.
Yeah.
This simply says that as long as you get something, like you can provide a access token from this tenant that has this subject here, meaning that you can authenticate as this user assigned identity, then cool. Then you're good. And I can say one use case that we use it for in FortyTwo. So we have a lot of automations or integrations running for our customers, but and we are running them as automation accounts in our tenants, but we are accessing resources in the customer tenants. So that's where we use this. So we use user assigned identities and sign into the customer tenant using a multi-tenant app reg, so that it looks like anything that we do in the customer tenant will always come from like a certain multi-tenant application, rather than a gazillion different identities that no one knows what is up with. Then we can actually have our app registration being verified with things like what's it called again? Like MPN, verified publisher, and things like that.
So it's even a published verification, yeah.
Yes. So you can actually prove that you're a Microsoft partner and everything, and things look a bit more professional.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Cool. Yeah. Well, then we have an understanding, and everything you have done and every code example will be in your blog post. So just head in there if you need to get the lines. Make sure you do it the right way.
Yeah, goodworkaround.com.
Yeah, perfect. So thank you so much for this session, Marius.
My pleasure.
Yeah, see you around.
See ya.